Nice.
Yeah.
What you're hearing are the sounds of people everywhere putting on Bombas socks, underwear, and T-shirts made from absurdly soft materials that feel like plush clouds. Yeah, that plush. And the best part? For every item you purchase, Bombas donates another to someone facing homelessness.
Bombas. Big comfort for everyone. Go to bombas.com/soft and use code SOFT for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/soft and use code SOFT.
His face was a leather skin, very, heavy, thick skin with wrinkles, deep wrinkles, like he had worked outside all of his life. But he didn't look old, he just looked wrinkled. Wendy's Coffee House. Hello, I'm Wendy. I wanted to talk about ghosts and other things in addition to that. The trigger was scrolling Facebook. I happened to see one of the people I followed for quite some time, Umberto de Grazia. His posts are in Italian. The thing is, when I first found his information, he was dealing with Jonas Elrod, who had the experience of seeing all sorts of stuff that made him think he was going crazy. And when I interviewed Jonas Elrod, I wanted to do it because I had also seen some of those things, similar things, that made me wonder, what else is going on with our reality? I don't believe when these things happen that they are an indication that we are crazy. I think when we see things that we might categorize as anomalies, ghosts, elves, huge dogs that aren't there. I've seen that too, but it was associated with a person. And this dog follows that person. It's an indication that there are some issues with that person. And this dog is almost like a tell, in poker, where it gives you information about the person that normally you wouldn't have access to because of the presence of this spirit animal, spirit being, spirit guardian. Then I know, okay, these are issues that person is going through. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not threatened by it. However, the dog is intimidating. It's a big black dog. And, when people call these the hounds of hell, okay, fine. For different people, they are different things. And that's the other thing, that we don't all experience these realities, these alternate realities, these different dimensions the same way. So it's hard sometimes to explain that you're going through something without somebody else telling you what it is. Just because it sounds similar, that isn't an indication that it is the same. So I wanted to talk about this time to describe some of these things. And going back to the page that I saw from Umberto de Grazia, I had checked in with his information before, but it's been a while. And so then when I went to the webpage this time, I found something he was doing on multidimensionalism. What that is seeing things beyond this dimension that may show up on film, recordings, as designs, impressions. And there's one in there that has a person who has fainted, and the focus is on Umberto, and the person in the middle of this group is on the ground. And then you see this streak of blue, electric blue streak going through the picture, and they identify the source as an outlet, an electrical outlet. That was for me, okay, I'm not even going to say. I shouldn't. Okay, light bulb. All right, that was for me an immediate recognition, a link, because what I do with nightlights and what I see with nightlights, I believe is electrical. It's all, for me, a connection with beyond the physical form with the spirit element. And that's around us all the time. And when I am called to do readings, it isn't always about the ghost. It's beyond the ghost. The ghost is almost an after effect or a superimposed image over what else is there. The ghost is a residual, and that's how I explain it, because for me, this other stuff is actually more relevant, more important, and a stronger impression the way I view it. It gives me an overlay of the environment. Now, my seeing and my intuiting, my sensing is my own. I can't compare it to someone else's. I don't know how they sense, they feel, they view, they interpret what they are looking at. But as an intuitive, as a channel, as someone who is also experiencing these anomalous events, I have to find a language for it. And I can't jump to conclusions and assume that my sight relates to anyone else. So when you are dealing with someone who is an intuitive, a sensitive, a psychic, they're interpreting things in their environment in a way that is linear, a way that we can make sense of it. And I like that about the UFO stuff, that people are trying to finally include the experiencer's story instead of saying, well, this is an imaginative thing. This is something that you have created. This is something that's a psychological deal. I really think it's beyond that. I think that it is another dimension where we are in sync, we are linked, we are communicating. And I also ran into a blog post from another guy who's written a book about his own experiences, who feels that same connection with this is more than just a psychological event trying to impact us in a negative way or a positive way. It's a way of getting us to think outside the box, to expand our awareness, expand our concepts, to evolve our way of dealing with these situations that we find challenging. When you're talking about some of the experiences with entities who are considered alien or ET, they can be incredibly negative because there's pain involved. And when I connected with one of the ETs who was trying to guide me at the time, there were a lot of paranormal events in addition to seeing an ET in my bedroom and something that would be called a drone. I don't know any other language. I reported it as a UFO, and unfortunately, all of these sightings, we have similar language for different things. That's the frustration there too, is I have to report it as something. I don't know what it is. I also reported something as a UFO that appeared outside my house in the yard above a tree. When I tried to look at it, it was so fast that I could register it was there, but I couldn't get a visual. I couldn't wrap my mind around what I was seeing. And intentionally, when I tried to look at it again, it shifted. And so what I could see looked like if someone had taken an eraser of pencil on a piece of paper and erased something. It was that gray blob. It wasn't smoke. It wasn't a cloud. It was something that was trying to erase itself from my vision. And so I thought, wow, I could make sense of it like that. It was intentionally trying not to be seen and had no idea that I don't think it anticipated that I would be able to be aware of it. When I stepped outside the door, I looked right at it. And so there it was. Poof, I was looking right place, right time. I don't think there are any accidents. I think I was supposed to see it. And then beyond that, everything was up in the air. What I was able to see, what I was able to remember, capture, visualize, all of that was iffy. There was no guarantee. There was an awareness. So in that way, I am aware of these other events, these other presences, these anomalies, but I haven't quite got them in a way that I can consciously create an image that works for me. So the ET thing, when that was happening and I saw this drone type thing in my room, it had colors. It was lit up about the size of a dinner plate with green and red light bulbs. My memory was at about 13 to 15 lights on this plate size round thing. You see, this is where it gets complicated, because with that, I found one person at the time, I think it was about 2013, who had a similar experience of something that size in a bedroom, in a house, and I think it was Poland. So it wasn't, that's the first, I happened to see a report. I thought, oh my gosh, here's somebody else who reported this in their bedroom, and it was about the same size of something I had seen. It wasn't an orb, it was an actual something that looked physical. The funny thing about that was I didn't know it was there. The dog told me. And I thought the dog was upset at the cat, or the cat was lurking, and so the dog's growling a little bit. So I was going to spy on them, open my eyes just to, just kind of squinting, looking, and realized I'm looking at a light thing on just above, under the ceiling, and okay, that I hadn't expected that, but the dog saw it. Since the dog saw it, I knew, okay, it was something real. It wasn't fiction. The dog was also aware and alerted me to the presence. When I tried to actually focus beyond counting the number of lights on the plate and trying to work my mind around it, there's a fraction of a second you have this awareness. You're seeing something, you don't know what you're seeing, and your mind is trying to come to grips with it. And it's outside the window. So it's like it went through the window and the mini blinds. I can see light, the little green lights on the other side of the mini blinds, knowing that if it did that, there's no way I'm going to be able to go get a camera and try and take a picture. It just indicated it did not want to be seen. And the other thing, too, is when you try to take a picture, sometimes, ask anybody who's tried to take a picture of Bigfoot, sometimes it doesn't work. The camera freezes, or that was a joke. UFO, anything anomalous. When you are trying to actually do that, you're slowing things down. All right, you are bringing a linear element to a temporal, a multidimensional, another altered state awareness. So for all of those who say we need pictures, we have to be in alignment with whatever it is we're dealing with. And occasionally that happens. So when you do have people who are successful at taking pictures of ghosts, of orbs, of UFOs, of ETs, of whatever it is, then you have someone who is in alignment, and they take their energy on that plane, also taking whatever mechanical instrument, camera, into that dimension. And I know this is a novel way of viewing it, but it works for me because I have been able to take pictures in some instances of things that were not seen on the physical plane. And one had to do with a tree. My husband actually had the camera for a minute. He also got a picture, and I don't remember how this happened exactly, but there are 3 frames of this incredible combination of colors in a uniform pattern that go from one area of the yard beneath the tree almost into the ground and then back up. So it isn't in our dimension the way we would see it as something that it hits a brick wall and it stops. It hits the ground and it stops. It goes into the ground. It goes beyond. So it's a non-physical, non-corporeal being of some kind. And I didn't know I took the picture of that until after we were looking at the film, and this was digital. That was a surprise. But at the same time, at that point, we were in the same dimension as that being and able to connect and capture the moment. So the frustration was it isn't repeatable. I've taken more pictures in that place, and nothing since then, it's probably been a decade, has revealed itself. However, the dreams, the visions, the insight, the consequences of having that kind of element and knowing about it, and knowing it's in your presence, you can connect with it or something that relates to it. And for me, that happens to be fairies. It happens to be the other elementals that are present in nature. And dealing with that, when I was a child, I had an imaginary friend. Real to me. But my mom at one point said when I was about 4.5 years old, I had been speaking about this imaginary friend for quite some time. But I told her, Heygo flew out the window. And Heygo was gone. I never mentioned Heygo again. But until that moment, Heygo had been a companion and a very real presence in my life. I know it, looking at it, now as an adult, that it was time for me to become assimilated into the physical world, into other dealing with people here on a physical level. And so that element had prepared me, had kept me company, had entertained me, And all my Barbie dolls played underground. So my Barbie dolls were constantly, and I didn't have a real Barbie. I had like a skipper Barbie, okay? We couldn't afford the real Barbie. Anyway, and maybe she would have been worth a lot of money now if I'd never played with her. That's not the point. Skipper and the other clan that I had, they were all underground inhabitants. And I think that had something to do with the being I was playing with, because later on, when I asked, I said, okay, Heygo, I would like to see what you looked like so I would understand why I wasn't afraid. And can you help me? Can you give me an image? And so the vision, which is extraordinary because it's so easy, you just ask. The vision came, and I had seen a green light and remembered, a green flash or something as Heygo flew out the window and left. So I had that image, that impression. But then as the other vision comes in, I am given, and this is a full-blown like you're there vision. I'm in a house, a cabin in the woods, and a bird comes to the front and lands on the windowsill. At that point, I understand in my knowing that I need to look out into the backyard. And in these kinds of visions, it isn't a room that has depth, like a 20-foot here, 15 feet. It's a room where you have an image, the window is the front. And then immediately you are transported, you look behind to the backyard. In the backyard is this smaller male figure riding a fox. Now this man, to me, appeared to be maybe 3 foot high, as I have to, figure out in my mind how to measure something that there's no way for me to measure. But it looked like an ordinary size fox. In the perspective that I have, the man would have been at the most 3 feet high to be able to ride the fox like it was a horse. And he's dressed in a way that indicates to me what he might be. And he has this heavy type woven fabric material, like a burlap sack, kind of. And but it makes pants and a jacket. I think there was a vest. I've written this down, and so, forgive me if I'm not being absolutely precise on the exact memory. But it looks like there's clothing, so it's an outfit. And then he has dingo boots. They're a lower brown boot of some kind, and he also has a hat. My husband said it's a stovepipe hat. Well, it's a hat with a smaller. It's not the Abe Lincoln or the big tall stovepipe. It's a smaller hat. I believe it was a brown color. The most amazing thing about it was his face.
Not all bread is created equal. And if you like yours soft, fluffy, moist, and delicious, then Hero Bread and Buns should be your first choice. But Hero Bread isn't just about taste and texture. It's high in fiber with ultra-low net carbs with 0 grams of sugar. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co, HERO.co for 10% off your first purchase.
Wendy's Coffee House. His face was a leather skin, very, heavy, thick skin with wrinkles, deep wrinkles, like he had worked outside all of his life, but he didn't look old. He just looked wrinkled. and he was smiling. He was smiling at me like he was delighted that I asked. And there were no words, no language, nothing except he smiled at me to say, here I am. And this is what I look like, or what I looked like for you. And I thought, that's why I wasn't afraid of him. I saw him as a little man. So we would call him a gnome or a fairy. And there are probably other words. But that's the word I have for him, is that he was a gnome, a nature being, a little person. And depending on what part of the world you're in, there are different words and different ways of describing someone like him. But I do know he exists on a different dimension, a parallel plane, and he is real for me. Now, does that make me crazy? No, it makes me aware of something else that others don't see. And that's where we have this split, this disconnect of trying to analyze and compartmentalize all of these experiences and make them into something odd, weird, suspect, uncommon, not normal. Even paranormal is a description that takes it away from the reality of it's just an altered state. It's another dimension. It's an altered plane of awareness, of existence, of being. It's multidimensional consciousness. We are aware of more than just what is here in the physical plane. And so for him to give me, to honor me with that awareness, that knowing, that seeing, that it was just like I was there. Everything around me was real. And the room, the bird, the noises, the sound, and then him being there on the fox. I don't remember a fragrance or a scent. I don't remember that. I remember more, the stronger impression was the visual and the sense of joy, of that delight, that happiness. And he let me look at him and to see him and to know, aha, you are my friend Heygo. And you wanted me to see that as an adult so that I would understand and be able to put more pieces of my puzzle together. There are other times when I've had these experiences of other beings, other presences. And a lot of times it's in the dream time. Other times it will be a vision. And the vision is incredibly strong. It's more real than real because it's like it saturates you and you are fully immersed in whatever this picture, this place, this state of knowing is. And the thing going back to what I was inspired by, Umberto de Grazia, who's also a psychic, and again, I have to translate everything because it's all in Italian. On his site, when I'm looking at these other pictures where they have the technology and they're trying to fill in the blanks of something that's just an outline, and then taking that element and trying to put the dots together and make an image and bring it forward and say, yes, there is something here, and this is how it presents itself. This is how we can see it. There is no presence in our reality for this being. There's an outline, or there's an image, or there's a color, or an organization of elements. I think that's what it's about, though, is giving a context and a template for people like me who see and sense these things and have no way to make it real for somebody else. An example is when I went to the Stanley Hotel. I went with a friend, and the friend isn't necessarily open to what I see and what I was feeling. And my nightlight's absolutely not. They are blinking light, and that's all there is to it. So we go to the Stanley Hotel, and there's this buzz. There's an electricity about it where it's a higher frequency. So I feel this buzz, and he says, well, I need to find the bathroom. And I say, well, it's down the hall to the left. And I was right. I had no idea. Someone told me in my ear, the telepathic thing said that. So I repeated it out loud, and it was right. Okay, that's cool. That was kind of the introduction. So as we're walking around and just kind of exploring the place, I'm connecting with someone who at that time was giving tours and was connected to Mrs. Stanley, who loved to play the piano and was very picky about who she lets near the piano, but at that point was accompanying and entertaining someone by saying it was okay for them to be there. In the space, it felt fuller. And so even though these are empty rooms, there was a presence and a sensation of something else going on behind the scenes. When we left, I had the song. My grandmother played the show, Lawrence Welk. So there's all this music from that era that I'm familiar with, and then hearing a song as we're leaving the Stanley Hotel. I don't want to sing it, but because I'll torture the song. but it was that sense of singing, and that was there, that the dancing, the singing, the celebrating, the joy, the party, that element in that space, they're still there. They're still celebrating. They're in their own little world, their own little dimension. And this is what I see in other places too, where there are dimensions and overlays of different timelines where they might be there from the 20s, they might be there from the 40s, they might be there from before we started doing anything, regarding documenting time. But these presences are still available. They're still there, and they're still in some way alive. They are maintaining some kind of a rhythm, some kind of a pattern, and you can pick those up wherever you are, even in your house. Your house, if people have been there before, then there can be some kind of a presence or a sign or an indication that there's a pattern that is pre-existing pattern that is still running a program. So then you get into thinking about this like a computer and how our minds work that way, where we've got overlays, different programs. You need to reformat the hard drive, get rid of old stuff and then reboot and do things. Okay, the computer language, I think, is perfect for that kind of thing. I'm getting sidetracked. So I'll go back. As we leave, then there's the song. And, of course, the person I'm with is like... let me, get out of Dodge. Let's leave. And so the electronics on the vehicle, the windows are acting up, not working the way they're supposed to, either up or down. All right. So we get back into Boulder, which is a good distance away, and stop at an antique store, get out of the vehicle, and that vehicle starts, as we walk into the store, the vehicle starts going off. The warning on it is just blaring really loud and hard to get it to stop, won't turn off, that kind of thing. But that was the ghosts messing with the person who was poo-pooing my encounters and my awareness and my sensation that these things are real. Again, there's no proof. That was just something running amok with the electronics. And that's what my nightlights do 24/7. So that's a way of bringing someone's attention to something in a way that makes them question their reality. And at the same time, for me, there's no question. It was affirming. It's like, okay, yeah, just a way of signing off saying, yes, it's real. It's real. And each of us goes around about learning this in our own way. And sometimes we need a kick to say, hey, don't be afraid. Or, hey, watch out. You're intruding. When I was with my ex-husband and we were looking at properties, we were thinking about moving and relocating. He said, go into that house and check and see. There were people there. Usually they weren't in the house that had a for sale sign up. He said, go and see what they're going to ask for it. I went in and interrupted at that point a time when the family was gathering for the distribution of whatever property. Anyway, and there's no way. How would I know that? And I got hit with a psychic bomb, a headache, energy. And it took about 3 or 4 hours for that to go away. Massive migraine. And I heard her. She was absolutely furious because I was intruding. And this was a special time because her relatives were there. And apparently this wasn't always the case where everybody all got together. But on this occasion, everyone that she wanted there was present, and I was intruding. I did not ask permission, and I was told to get out. So from that time on, just because someone told me to go check something out, I had a better idea that if it felt okay, I would. But I would ask permission before going into a strange place without having any idea of what was there and what my purpose was. So needless to say, I did not ask anything about it, waited for the sale sign to come up and decided we didn't need to buy that house. Because her energy was going to be there, and that was a huge clue. And prior to that, we had gone to other houses, and lights would go off or on, or the smoke alarm, the fire alarm, the little, you put it in there for the fire detector, it would chirp, make little sounds and stuff, knowing that it wasn't about the dead battery, it was about the spirit saying hello. Or there was one house we went into, the electricity wasn't on, but the ceiling fans were all running. The realtor didn't notice or ignored. I didn't say anything. I did point it out to my husband, and Yeah, okay, all right. Don't buy the house. So things like that, going into different properties. And that was where I really benefited from noticing things that were going on behind the scenes about different properties. And it was a very clear message, stay clear. So just because a house looks like it's good on paper doesn't mean you're going to be able to live in it comfortably. And I think a lot of people find that out after the fact, and they get in and all of a sudden things happen and have no idea that this is also part of the equation. Getting into that and going back to what I saw with Umberto de Grazia, I would recommend, if you have a chance, to check out, if you believe in things that are ghosts, elementals, fairies, little people, all of that, Sasquatch, yes, all those experiences for me are real. So that's why I wanted to kind of go a different direction this time. The other thing that I'll share is the experience I had at, and this is a Civil War affiliated battlefield, the Battle of Blackjack, and it's near where I am in the Midwest. Originally, I think they were hoping that I would tell them about the ghost. And I didn't know what I would tell them about because I don't do any research prior. And so when I showed up and all of a sudden had all of these voices and all of this different information, I'm like, it was about the convergence of multiple timelines. It wasn't just about this, the event. It was about everything that went through that area. That battle is known for being one of the three that triggered the Civil War in the United States. That site happens to be also the site where the Santa Fe Trail crosses, where the Native Americans were made to march from one state to another where they had relocated them. So it was actually called the Death March. And the other thing was that the Underground Railroad ran through there as well. So you've got the Battle of Blackjack dealing with the Civil War. You have the Santa Fe Trail, which predated the Civil War. The presence of the Native Americans also predated it. They at one point were in the entire state of Kansas and Missouri with no encroachment. And then the horrific things that happened when they were relocated forcibly. And then the Underground Railroad, where the slaves are trying to escape to freedom. And so all of the turmoil from all of that, there are overlays in that space. It's like a web. These are interconnected threads that actually connect and in some way, shape, or form carry impressions and memories and active reconstruction of certain kinds of events that happen in or beside or along in conjunction with that space. That I was not really anticipating because I have never been to a space that was so incredibly active. But because of all of those elements, and especially in the U.S. history, those are very, very important elements in our timeline. And so all of a sudden having that dumped on my head, I'm like, okay. The most important part of that event, and when I visited the entities that were there, they had a message, they had a purpose. So they were the ones that were front and center. And the purpose was to say that the things that are going on now don't have to be repeated. We can avoid repeating an old cycle of our history. It wasn't just for the United States, but across the entire planet, where these scenes are playing out again. We've been through these kinds of scenes, this dramatic intensity of emotions, the fight for freedom, the fight for independence, the fight to be heard, the fight to be validated and accounted for, and to have your own space, to hold certain places as sacred ground, as sacred territory that need to be protected, the environment front and center. This is a planet, this is a nest, and we can only do so much before the nest is going to be toxic, not just for us, but for everything that lives here. So those messages were actually integrated within this place, this one tiny section of property, where all of these messages and all of this history converged, and all the threads connect to the larger stories, the hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands of people who are connected to these stories. It's absolutely fantastic. So tuning in to those stories and those energies and those entities was fascinating. It still is, and it forced me to to research some more of the history. It's been a while. And not only that, there have been new pieces, new pages of history written and discovered and disclosed since that time. It's taken this long to put some of the pieces together, and that's not all been done for a library or for a college or for some kind of historical lesson. It's because the people who were involved had relatives, and they wanted their stories told, so they started collecting stories. That, to me, is also a part of this, that the stories aren't all in history books. They're not all written in a place where you're going to go get an education and find out about it. They're written in bodies, hearts, and minds. These stories exist through the people, through us. And there's more, I think, importance right now in us learning how to accept and advance our own awareness, ability, telepathic and psychic and whatever you want to call it, intuition, because that's where we learn and where we have so much room to grow. Thank you for listening. I have a blog. It's on talkingtonightlights.com. It's Wendy's Coffee House and Conscious Living. Then the show continues with more guests, and I like to call them conversations, interviews. I hope you'll tune in. Take care and stay curious.